this is the state of the industry address, and we're pretty young. And I did have something planned up until about a week and a half ago, and then I had this moment. Has anyone here seen The Big Short, the movie The Big Short? Yeah. You know that part where Steve Carell is sitting there with the bankers and is just like, how is this happening? That was my moment that made me change what I was going to say to this, because there's some pretty sort of glaring facts and practices that are happening at the moment that do need to be addressed. So today I'll be getting into those. It's sort of like Eric's presentation in that it's a little bit scary, but then we get to the good, positive stuff. And right now, if I were to describe the industry in Australia at least, it's like with Joe when he says, oh, you know, what would your grandma say? We're the naughty kid that's like, grandma thinks we're good, but we're not really. So that's sort of where we're at this point. But the overview, it's like what's going on in Australia at the moment with sports nutrition, the reality, current trends, claims, then onto the opportunity, the pathway that's involved in that, and then the direction, and where I personally see us going, and where I'd like to see the industry progress to, okay? So right now, and pretty much for the last 4.5 years, and those of you that know the backstory of Sports Nutrition Australia, it was something that really just started to cover my butt when I owned a facility of my own, Training Allied Health Centre, where I knew that the PTs were providing nutrition advice, I knew that they weren't educated, and I knew that they weren't qualified and insured, so I wanted to cover myself. So it came from a defensive place. And basically what we had to do was, and the initial challenge was, I guess, defining to the insurers what sports nutrition was and how it differed to dietetics, okay? And the feedback that came was, well, dietetics was clinical health treatment, okay? So chronic disease treatment and prevention. Sports, if you're in this realm and people don't have these things, then we're okay to look at this stuff if there's an adequate, reasonable level of training. And that was where the metabolic health system and screen was authored with Dr. Cam McDonald, Peter Carriage, that some of the sports dietitians here may know of. She helped with that initially, and then Ali Smith's gone on to consult to this as well and the updates of this. And so as a result of this, we were able to ascertain that specific scope of practice and legitimise that, I guess, professional pathway. And since then, what we've seen is over 400 people accredited and practicing with the relevant best practices. So everyone likes to say at the moment that they're evidence-based, but is the evidence that you're referring to actually relevant to your practice, or is it something that's more just something you're reinforcing your bias with or confirming your bias with? Okay, so that's what I guess we help to ascertain. Since then, we've assessed with that screen almost 5,000 people. And we've been able to identify over 1,000 people at the end of last year who were flagged as medically high risk, who otherwise wouldn't have been. And then organise the referral pathways for them to the relevant allied health specialists, which is pretty cool. Some of them have the existing ones that they're working with, but to be able to provide that awareness with the practitioner is really important. As a result of this, we have this thorough integration link between fitness, sports nutrition, and the specialist allied health services that didn't exist before. I know that, for instance, Gary, who's here, he's contributed to some risk assessment within the fitness industry, but it's a trust-based system, okay? Whereas for this is mandated. Every single person needs to do this if they're seeing a client. Otherwise, scope of practice is no longer valid, okay? The present trend that we're seeing, and to give those of you who don't sort of know where we're at within Australia, we've got, depending on the body's reporting and how many, I guess, organisations you would consider a body, there's anywhere north of 100,000 professionals operating as fitness professionals within the country. Okay, we've got about 20 million people, or just north of that. So we've got a fair few fitness professionals operating, but the provision of nutritional advice outside of the basic, the government-endorsed healthy eating guides is just not allowed. Some people sometimes think that ESSA means that they can do that as well if they've done exercise science or nutrition science or something like that, but if they're ESSA accredited, they can't do it either. And they don't have the scope of practice to be able to look after that. And typically speaking, in those undergrad programs within Australia that we run, there's not enough adequate training especially in a clinical setting, to ensure that they're going to be operating in best practice pathways. So that's sort of where it's at. And if we go back to the guides and we look at the guides, I'd say currently there's a disregard for the national guidelines, and it comes from a place of ignorance, all right? I can't tell you how many fitness professionals I've spoken to in the recent years, months, who still think that we have a pyramid, but it's this system. And that's it. So, but if I actually look at this, it's great. You know, it addresses the majority of what we need to be working with people for. Okay, there's like 30 to 40% of plants. People don't eat enough plants. We've got lean protein there. We've got a good array of foods, and it's whole foods. So, whilst it might be popular for people to belittle them or, you know, have a negative connotation toward these, they're actually really good. And I know I've had conversations with people like Phil before he even went through the program, where he was like, it seems to be trendy to bash the guides, but they're good, you know. And since then we've had some other compounding things. So a lot of people aren't aware that the dietitians have really their hands cuffed with how they can promote themselves, and they have strict social media policies. So people don't see things on there and then think that because the guides are bad and the pyramid is bad, and that we don't see any of the good that they're doing, that the belief within the industry has somewhat become that dietitians aren't that great, but they're awesome. It's just that they're not allowed to show us the certain aspects of awesomeness that they're putting out there and achieving with clients. And then add to that the internet, social media, the impact it's having on people's self-confidence, that easy access to information that we didn't have 10 years ago, and a lack of training and critical thinking. And then we get this well-intended but untrained, you know, the influencers, the Fit Tea stuff, the Dr. Oz, and everyone's an expert, but everyone's got conflicting interests in their area of expertise. And the result? We have a bubble. We have people who don't have accreditation and recognition, you know, 100,000 people plus. We have people who aren't insured. We have people who don't know what best practice is. We have people who aren't critically thinking in a client setting. And it's just that, unlike this animation saying that it's Bitcoin, the bubble is our industry with those people. And I didn't realize how severe it was until I had the meeting with our insurance partners the other week. So add to the aforementioned, other certain bodies are claiming they have cover when they don't, and I'll elaborate on that in a bit. And then in order to be a body, you have to be a not-for-profit. But some of these bodies, in order to be a not-for-profit, you have to release your figures, and the insurers are aware of this stuff. They're not releasing their figures to the public. And so we've got this perfect storm of this stuff, and then adding into these bodies that exist without that transparency that's required, and it creates what we're seeing here. This is pretty crazy. I didn't believe when I heard it at first. This was my Big Short moment. So currently, there's over 100 claims a month in the fitness industry, ranging from $30,000 to $2 million plus in lawsuits for negligence. That's increased over 1,000% in the last 3 years. Think about that for a moment. Like, it's not sexy science, but it's pretty damning data. At the moment, they say the split, and I would love to have more quality quantifiable data from the insurers for this, but I have to take their reports that they pull from their systems. But it's about a 10 to 15% of that total claim is somewhat nutrition related, and it's a lack of best practice screening. Does that client have a medical condition that requires them to take medication that will interact with their body negatively on certain food protocols that people aren't aware of? What's that triage process for that person? So I know at the moment it seems like this stuff's not really real and we don't hear about this. The reality is that we don't hear about them because they're settled as non-disclosure settlements. Okay, so they sign an NDA, they say we don't admit 100% responsibility for said claim, and then they move on, pay them out some money from there. It seems to be that if we're not seeing it heaps, people just think it's not happening, whereas it's happening at a staggering rate and a staggering rate of growth. And it's really not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when for a lot of people. And I'm not standing up here going, hey, I want every single person of these 100,000 people to be doing this. I just want them to be aware. Because at this rate of growth, it will affect a lot of people to the point where they may no longer be able to do a profession that they enjoy. Just training and working with people. And the thing is that even if they've got like said insurance from some insurers, for instance, I had a recent graduate apply for an online insurance policy. We don't have a relationship with that insurer, but it said that they're covered when they applied online. But they've got these weird like get out of jail clauses in it where it's like, you're covered. She sent through her qualifications and registration documents. They were like, yep, all sorted. But then there was 3 clauses basically saying, if we deem your qualifications or credentials not relevant at the time of a claim, then we have the choice to pull out, which is effectively what the rego bodies do. So this is sort of funny. I've been making jokes about myself being Ned Stark for, I don't know, the last 2-3 years when I'm interacting with people, especially within the industry. And basically, I guess the way I look at it is I'm constantly getting this information. So every 3 to 6 months, I'll have a meeting with the local state ombudsmans and the relevant state ombudsmans, as well as the insurers every year, to look at, you know, I guess what's going on, what needs to change, how things can improve, how we can help the industry from a place of positive growth. And it's just funny, I see people constantly jostling for this title of like lead influencer and stuff, and all the while I'm like, winter is coming. Like, it doesn't even matter about this stuff that you're talking about and we're debating about. What matters is what's happening in the background and this massing growth of claims that's happening. And it's coming from a place of the growth of these no win, no fee lawyers. So from what I've been told, again, it's not the most I guess peer-reviewed source, but from what the insurers have been informing me for the last 12 to 18 months is that the majority of these claims are from no win, no fee lawyers. So they'll start it out, hey, if we get 30 grand, they'll make 15. The law firm will make 15 because it ends up being a 50-50 split. It's easier to settle and not accept responsibility and have the coverage and then have the policies change. And we're really sort of 5 to 6 years behind what's happening in the UK, both from a growth perspective and a positive thing, but also from this. And it started reaching some pretty staggering heights in the UK to the place where they actually had to put on a separate court to handle negligence claims. And that only happened in the last 18 months. Just doing a quick search for Brisbane firms last week to just confirm this, there was over 82 paid results for no win, no fee firms. So they're out there and they want to make it happen because it's profitable for them, and there's nothing sort of stopping them and keeping them at bay from making these claims to make a quick dollar, you know, rightfully or wrongly. And then we've had some worst case scenarios just in December this year where this poor girl passed away from weight cutting, and her family lost her as well. And it was what I could imagine would be from a place of well-intended information, but from unqualified sources. We don't have bodies and people out there putting out the information to say, if you're going to do this, go to this person. This secondhand information can be potentially at times dangerous. And so what happens with these worst case events is then the government will have a knee-jerk reaction, media has a knee-jerk reaction, and everyone gets upset that the media is sensationalizing things. It's like, oh, you know, of course they'll do that. Well, it's like we could do better. Part of the responsibility is on us for these things. So, I mean, that's enough about the bad stuff, but the opportunity, and I guess this is what gets me excited, and this is what gets me out of bed with energy. And it's to be a part of the constructive change. It's to have a profession that actually instills pride within you. So for those 100,000 personal trainers and the 15,000 exercise scientists who might be like, look, I don't really like this as a job. You know, if I were to go into a room full of those people and say, how many people are actually proud to say that they are what they are at this stage, the majority of people wouldn't. They wouldn't say that they are. But we've got an opportunity by setting up the practicing standards that we do have right now and that we will continue to evolve with, by having the pathways that we do, by being able to offer the contribution that we can to actually offer a profession that does instill pride within you. You can be a part of a body that then not only supports you but invests in you directly by providing your annual CPD and ensuring that it happens, not like a 5% audit rate, but 100% audit rate. And then actually promoting you to the general public so that way they know that you're the person to go to for these things, and hey, maybe be wary of these other people. The access to the study and career progression pathway is really cool as well. And it's not to knock what we can currently offer, it's just to say that we've got a pretty cool innovative pathway that provides you with an opportunity to get to a postgraduate level at 40% of certain 3-year bachelor programs now, while you're earning while you're learning in that industry, which is pretty cool. And then the specific careers in performance nutrition, this is the stuff that I wanted to talk about, more this stuff, but I just wanted to take the time to address the claims because I couldn't believe it when I was hearing it. The graduate diploma in the UK, so like I said, the UK is ahead of us both in the cool things as well as the claims. They're now saying that the graduate diploma is the qualification that they want in the EPL, and they've now got 6 full-time coaches with EPL sides and then 2 contractors to these sides as well wanting that graduate diploma. And this is what the pathway looks like. So basically, up until this opportunity presented itself to affiliate with the institutes and the universities that we have, the typical pathway would be for a 3-year undergrad in X Science, be about $65,000 to $85,000. If you didn't know that you didn't want to do this for a job, you had to wait until you'd spent that and graduated, or until you'd done a personal training course and then realised, I don't want to work with people, or I don't want to have to do this for a living, okay? If I'd gone to you, each one of you, and said, can you loan me $85,000? I've got no guaranteed job on the way out, and I don't know if I'm going to earn it back. You'd say that's the worst business idea ever. And yet right now, this is the accepted practice for these people, whereas we've got something that I would say is a little bit better. The cool thing about this is as well is the grad dip, it's about an 18-month program to 24-month program, depending on how long you're taking in your previous study. It's specifically on the applied sports nutrition model. This is effectively the CISSN level. So the CISSN is a part of this. It's all about your case study and clinic load at that point in time anyway, okay? So we've got the opportunity for people to come in, have a restricted and a refined supervised certificate so that you can almost see if this is for you, okay? The same way that the fitness industry and personal training has a low barrier to entry, which probably contributes to the lack of quality, we will have that. But as a part of our practicing standards moving forward and the way the insurance is rolling, this will become the accepted mean standard, okay? So after a certain amount of years practicing, after a certain amount of revenue generated, it'll be mandated to go to here, okay? And that's for everyone's benefit. If the majority of your primary income is coming from this service and this profession, you do not want to have the minimum, you would at least want a graduate level qualification. And we want that for you. If you want to go on and do masters and PhD and all that kind of stuff, then great, you're contributing to the industry and that's awesome. But this will be the new accepted standard. You can experience the industry, you can see if you like it, and then, you know, you can see how you're going with it as well. If you do a 3-year degree or a 4-year degree or a 5-year master's and you haven't been working in it, you have the same problem as you do if you complete this. Where am I going to get my clients from? Who am I going to work with? How can I work with people? Am I an effective coach? The direction that we want to go with this, okay? So this is just a sort of quick synopsis. It could change, but this is the intention at this point. The goal is really to have about 5,000 members, and if we can do that by about 2023, that's it. We don't want to have any more. 5,000 people doing the right things, practicing the right way, working with everyone, setting a new standard for what can be and what should be, as opposed to what is. Over the next 2 to 4 years, that's where the mean standard of the graduate diploma will come into play. And then we're working on further developing graduate pathways, both within Australia and externally, so that way people have access to continue studying across there. And as a result of this is where we've had interest, and we've been asked and requested to set programs up in New Zealand and then Singapore and Japan and all this kind of stuff to be able to provide this pathway so that people can have access to this internationally, and it's not just like, hey, my country doesn't accept this. Because the hard part's done. The insurers were happy with everything. As long as the screen was there, as long as the pathway was there, they accepted it and approved it for every single country. And then looking at doing some relevant partnerships with complementary companies and services. So to give you guys an idea, Matt from TikTok's here today, and we just set up a joint venture agreement where we'll help contribute to the menus. Like I spoke about before, one of the biggest problems we're seeing is people just don't eat enough fruit and veg, right? Like, we've known it for the last 30 years. So we've worked on including some meals that just have the right recommended amount of veg. The same thing that guides have been saying for the last 20, 30 years, they're in there. And then 50 cents from every meal that's purchased from that range will then go into a research fund that we can contribute to with further research, which is really cool. And then the metabolic health screen system was sold out to a company called My Pocket Coach. And once they hit certain revenue and scale levels, then they start kicking back to a research budget as well. So we can further contribute in that way. The whole goal is really to provide an innovative career pathway that people are proud of, and it's perfectly complementary once you've got that initial level. So that way you can work in something that complements your study in a very simple way and in an effective way, okay? I remember 10 years ago when I was studying and I was told, your full-time job is being a student, we don't care about work, and it made it so much harder. So if we can have it complementary, why not? And then, of course, if we can host more events like these and bring out some of the best speakers in their fields in the world to be able to contribute in a really positive way, that would be awesome. So that's the snapshot. And I just want to leave everyone with this. We've got a really cool opportunity. Things are going well. We've had a really awesome start. The last 4 years have been ridiculously rewarding, but it comes with a big level of responsibility. Okay, so it's not just about a short-term fix or having a short-term title or anything like that. It's about understanding the work that's involved in order to maintain that and maintain the integrity within it. Let's make sports nutrition a successful, sustainable, well-respected career that we and everyone else is proud of and can respect, okay? And that's pretty much it from my end. I'm not going to do a Q&A. Because I want to keep time rolling well. But we'll have an intermission, briefly, and I'll set Michelle up with the mic and then we'll get into hers. Thank you.